What I'd like to do in the few minutes remaining is mention just a couple of items briefly and get some feedback from you either now or after the conference. And it's focusing on two things. As you know, we're a national organization and we're driving at two types of services. One is we are creating a series of advisory panels. And we have a number of people in the room who've already agreed to serve on these. And basically, you can think of this as a matrix. All the critical infrastructures have issues that are peculiar to themselves, and we're looking to gather top experts in each of those infrastructure areas who would be willing to serve at the national level so that, or from the national level to individual communities across the country might need their help. Similarly, we have experts in things like space weather and EMP and cybersecurity and so on, where we also need that level of expertise to be able to help local communities. We're also doing some things that are helping us cross stovepipes. Lots of times when you're in a given industry and you need to talk to somebody in another industry, it's nearly impossible to get your phone call answered or your email answered. And so one of the things we're looking to do is create various groupings of top leaders in the country who can facilitate that cross-sector and cross-jurisdictional communication. One of them, for example, is a policy committee. We're going to be assembling a group of retiring congressmen, governors, secretaries of this or that, and then their equivalents in the private sector who can be called upon to identify policy gaps and issues like the ones we're discussing today and find out how we solve those problems quickly because we're establishing those relationships with each other. In that group, we expect to have folks at the governor level. We've had support already from the National Governors Association about this. We talked today to folks at NARUC. There's a group called the Association of Defense Communities. And that's another group we're putting together. It's called the Military Civilian Liaison Panel. And the concept is very simple. On one side of the room, we're going to have a half dozen to a dozen top military leaders, current or retired, who understand what all the key military assets in the country are. And on the other side of the room, we're going to have their civilian counterparts who represent the communities and the private sector who surround those military establishments. The concept is very simple. We will induce or attract investment to make those counties surrounding those military bases so robust and self-reliant that when civilian critical infrastructure nationwide inevitably collapses, those communities will still be viable and those military bases will still be able to maintain their mission and readiness. There's a whole series of other ones that will make sense. We have a document you could read. It's Googleable. You could use Google. That's a word. Called the EMP SIG Guidance Document. It's a public document. It's also on the Secure InfraGard website. It's a governance document of only 2 pages. It fits on one sheet of paper. And it outlines what our mission is and what we're authorized to do, and it authorizes the formation of these committees that will make it possible for various government agencies who might otherwise have difficulty talking with each other to do that on a very neutral turf, and more importantly, bring the private sector folks there as well, who again have signed mutual non-disclosure agreements to make certain that when a confidential communication or conversation is happening, they could be confident that it's not going to be released to their competitors or to a bad guy. So it's one of the few groups in the country, as I mentioned before, that have the rough equivalent of a civilian security clearance that will facilitate these discussions and take the excuse off the table that we can't talk because we can't trust each other. So if you have friends and colleagues that you know who would like to serve on these committees, we knight them as being a top expert. The quid pro quo is that they answer a few calls and emails from folks at the local level so we can move the ball forward across the country. The second thing we're looking to do is, if you're an InfraGard member, we'd like to have some people who could help facilitate meetings and venues like this around the country. I'm a volunteer. I'm not getting paid to do this, and obviously we can only do so much, but we would like to be able to have some help. So if you're an InfraGard member, you don't have to be a super subject matter expert. You just have to be a reasonable facilitator, a humble person who gets along with people, demonstrated by a couple of references from your local InfraGard chapter, and then we could bring you on to participate in facilitating some of this at the local level across the country. We also are looking to do events like this from time to time when it's really easy to do because something else is already happening. I'm going to give you an example. Next year in October, InfraGard National is going to be doing an energy security conference in Annapolis. We may tag a meeting there. So what I'd like to do in the next few minutes, if you have any questions, and we can also do this informally after we close, but if any of you have any questions about what we would want to do at the national level on either of these concepts or have an idea for a next session. For example, we only had a few minutes for each of these key folks who are actually inventing product. Perhaps we need a day where we just have folks who are inventing technology, who are entrepreneurs, to showcase what they're doing. I mean, that's a possibility if we have support from that, from you. We may want to gather some folks like Clay Wilson and others who represent those schools wanting or having centers of excellence in cybersecurity to include these other areas of infrastructure security. And what do we do to move the ball forward there? So anyway, I'm going to be quiet. We only have a few minutes anyway. And I'm going to stand in front to see if I could recognize anybody who has a question or idea around this, because we don't get a chance to meet in person much. What I like to do is just take a few minutes to do it, make certain you have a few minutes to talk to each other before you leave. So do I see any hands? Any questions? Yes, I see a hand. Hold on one second. Bring the mic to you. Identify yourself and ask your question.
My name is Rudolf A. Krutar. I'm with the Marine Learning Institute, and I have a bum leg, and I was wondering if anyone's going to the reception at the Cosmos Club can give my friend and I right. Well, thank you. That's the answer to the question.
That's a great question. And see, that's networking in action. And you'd never have known that if we didn't have that. Ross has a question. Ross Howarth from Impact America. And by the way, their group also did some auxiliary sound and video today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. First, I just wanted to thank you and everyone here for putting this on. I thought it was fantastic. One of the things I wanted to make sure everybody was paying attention to was the idea of giving feedback to that FERC proposal that's out there. And we created a short link for it so that we can give it out here so everybody can get to it. So if you'd like it, it is Prepare Hub, so prepare and then hub.org/FERC. And also, if you haven't gotten one, we have these DVDs that are out in the front lobby. You can pick one up. And I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you very much. Do I see another hand? Do I hear a head rattle? John, you're going back to Minnesota. Any questions or comments before you go?
No, okay. Not really, other than this has been a wonderful forum, and thank you for bringing this together. It is very important that FERC hear from people in this group on this topic, have an expression of concern about what can be done to harden the grid. So if you've got any time between now and December 24th, please submit something.
Okay, so I'm going to get ready to close unless somebody waves a hand or jumps up and down. And what I'm wanting to do in the next 10, 15 minutes, actually we've got about 15 minutes, is to formally close and let each of you take some time to meet 5 other people that you don't know before you go and swap cards, do a deal, raise $5 million from your friends in the front row, or whatever it might be. You never know what a moment might bring, right? You can snatch the moment and do something wonderful. Wendy, you're here from Florida, right? Okay, so let me see. Anybody here from Colorado? Wait, wow, we got Colorado. Wow, I can't believe it. I just picked a state out of random. Anybody further south in Florida? I don't think so. How about Alaska? We actually, we have a list that is probably circulated in one of the programs. We had over 350 registered attendees just for these breakout sessions, and they came from a lot of states, and then somebody from Hawaii, although some people may have learned about the webcast and decided to stay home and watch it instead. But it was a great group of people who are coming and going throughout the day. You did have a chance to witness people who are actually making these policies or managing them, or the entrepreneurs creating technology which will disrupt all of what policymakers might think, because technology people tend to do that, right? You don't have to make a policy. You just invent the automobile and suddenly you get roads. So it's a very amazing thing. We need each other. You're all a bunch of high achievers. You're overworking. You're underloved and underappreciated, but I love you and I appreciate you, and I'm sure you appreciate and love each other, and you should take a few minutes to express that to each other before you go. swap business cards, do a deal, and come up with some ideas and send it to us at the EMP SIG and at InfraGard.net. You can join InfraGard if you're not already a member, as I mentioned. That's about my 5th plug for the day. Hopefully the InfraGard people will like that I've done that. And thank you very much, and thank you for coming.